Next, we're gonna talk about heavy metals. And heavy metals are pretty ubiquitous in the environment. And these are things like arsenic, which have skin disorders, cancer, diabetes, low test, pregnancy complications, cardiovascular complications, neurocognitive disorders, like almost everything under the sun. Same with lead, which leads to cognitive impairment, aka like low IQ, hypertension, which is high blood pressure, anemia, gut issues, reproductive issues. This is found in pretty high amounts in cheap baby foods. And then we have a bunch of other heavy metals, so things like sodium fluoride, mercury, aluminum, cadmium. And then these are pretty much the same effects as the two we mentioned before. Some of them are like low IQ, neurological issues like dementia, Alzheimer's, hypertension, and gut problems. So the main sources of heavy metals are water, low quality foods or powders, personal care products, and the air. So when we think about water, you're going to want a reverse osmosis filter. This filter will filter out everything, even the good minerals. So you'll want to add minerals back to the water. Don't drink plain reverse osmosis water. The second thing you do, and probably the best thing, is find a spring, but make sure it's tested because some of them can be super polluted. And the third thing is a glass bottle. We just looked at xenoestrogens. We don't fuck with plastic anymore. And then there's a heavy metal problem in big fish. So the top of the food chain, these heavy metals bioaccumulate, which means they stay in the fish gets eaten, and now the bigger fish has even more heavy metals. So things like sharks, swordfish, tilefish, king mackerels, marlins, bluefin, and big-eyed tuna, and orange roughy. I would not make any of these my main source of seafood. And then with cheap foods, these are again the biggest hitters. Cheap tobacco, smokings filled with cadmium, iron fortified foods. So a lot of flours you'll see in the supermarket, they'll add iron, which is a heavy metal if you have too much of it, to your flour. And you want to avoid this. Get normal flour. Rice, spices, all these greens and protein powders are usually filled with heavy metals. If you're buying them, make sure they're tested. Cheeses, so these are like frozen pizza cheeses, very cheap. They have to have that specific texture. They have to stay in a specific shape. And they usually do this by adding aluminum, which is like an anti-caking agent. Dark chocolate and cacao, these have a lot of lead. And you could decrease absorption of lead and cadmium by drinking milk. So I have a high quality cacao, Navitas, and I only use it with milk. I make chalky milk from it. Baby foods, now this is just sad, but a lot of cheap baby foods are having heavy metals in them. Leafy greens, root vegetables, and bone broth. Now you could make bone stock, which you only make for like 3-4 hours to get the gelatin, but bone broth, if it's cooked over like 24 hours or those longer periods of time, will also get heavy metals out of the bones and into the stock. And then skincare. Skincare is huge with all this stuff. Eyeshadow, blush, concealer, moisturizers, eye drops, pretty much all makeup you could think of. If it's not tested, if they don't announce it, if they're not a clean brand, there's probably going to be either phthalates, heavy metals, or other endocrine disruptors in the makeup. Now you might be thinking, how do I get all these heavy metals out of my body? How do I detox? With heavy metals, there are a lot of interactions. So like selenium will detox mercury. You could have calcium stop the absorption of iron. And then even things like vitamin B1 can bind and leave metals. So the first thing you want to make sure is that you're getting all the nutrients from your diet already. Because taking something to actually detox is challenging for the body. And you want to make sure you're nourished and then you could detox. And then you nourish again and then you could detox. So there will be a heavy metal protocol in the protocol section, but make sure you're following the light course, the EMF course, and the whole food nutrition course before you even touch that stuff. Okay, now we're gonna be looking at avoiding heavy metals. So the main thing here is you want to filter your water. There's multiple options, but you want to use a reverse osmosis water filter. Now with the reverse osmosis water filter, it removes everything, the good and the bad. So you would want to add minerals or electrolytes back into the water before drinking it. I left some options here with a countertop filter, a sink filter, and then a whole system filter. Next is shower filters. Your skin is very absorbent, especially your scalp. There's varying price ranges for the filters. The best one is expensive. There's a medium filter. Most filters in this price range are vetted and tested. And then there's a cheaper filter that still removes things. And it's a good entry point for anyone who wants to filter their water. Now for drinking water, you could find a spring. I've linked a website that helps you do that. Or just buy bottled water. My favorite bottled water, it's quite pricey, but is Gerolsteiner. And then remember again, we're avoiding cheap food. Specifically with fish, it's the big guys. I've listed all of them here. So with these other foods that tend to be higher in heavy metals, I would invest more money into the quality of these. So this means buying organic or buying local from a farmer's market, people who actually care about how they raise the food. And then for skincare, you could use those databases we talked about earlier, but I was looking at brands that have been actually heavy metal tested, and these were the cleanest brands: Beautycounter, 100% Pure, Primally Pure, Jane Iredale, and RMS Beauty. This is for the girl makeup people out there.